You're saying this is exactly what we need to do, is to speak of this as Islamic fascism, to actually name it because it never was properly named before.
Exactly.
But we're being told not to speak of it in terms of Islam at all.
Okay, we have been told, but I did it myself. I wrote a book, which I think is not translated in America, in 1994, 1994, which was called Dangerous Purity, 21 years ago. And I tried to find the secret thread, the common ground between Nazism, communism, and radical Islamism. I tried to build the common concept which helps to think the three together. And in this book, I proposed the formula of Islamofascism. I proposed the word because it seemed to me appropriate, number one, to name the phenomenon, number two, to say where it was coming from, and number three, in order not to put all the whole Islam in this basket, which, thanks God, is not the reality. I still believe that a big part of Islamic world, probably a majority of it, has nothing to do with fascism. And you have in the Muslim world, as we had in Europe in the 30s, a resistance, strong one, to this Islamofascism. But in order to encourage this resistance, in order to give this resistance inside the Arab world against fascism some weapons, some arguments, some help, we have to name the enemy.
Here's another comment that we'll pick up another theme here. You said, what holds us back? And then he says, at one point you say, what is it about this war that the America of Barack Obama, at least for the moment, seems not to really want to win? Now, one thought is that I have, one of my favorite BHL books is Left in Dark Times. And it, among its many arguments, is to talk about the way the left abandoned the core themes of what it means to be part of the left. Liberalism, democracy, justice, the rule of law, in favor of a kind of thinking that is fundamentally anti-colonialism, anti-Americanism, anti-Israel. So the foundational themes of the left were abandoned for just hating capitalism, hating America, hating white privilege and imperialism. And I wonder how much of this is played out. I mean, I don't know whether there's a PC movement in Paris, but we struggle here on college campuses. And my little joke about NYU, it's not NYU, it's every campus in the United States. There's certain things that are just not said, incredibly unfashionable thing to say. What, frankly, BHL has said for the last 20 minutes. The whole thing. But I wonder whether there's a way to understand this in that narrative of the older left, because you've been a member of the left, but they've been beating up on you for years. You've been both the darling and the whipping boy of the same group. But it does seem as that part of this difficulty of framing the language comes from that as long as America is behind it, or Israel's behind it, it's just bad. And so it's just simply much more fashionable to say, we will even be the strangest of bedfellows, will support Sudan, Darfur, because they're anti-American, even though they're genocidal maniacs, right? We'll support Hamas because they hate the Israelis, no matter what they do. If you hate capitalism, if you hate democracy, if you hate colonialism, if you hate white privilege, you're not our friend. And I wonder if you want to talk about this, because so much of this has been part of your career, fighting against this struggle between not just the clash of civilization, but the clash of ideas among intellectuals.
There is two different things in your question. First of all, Obama, and then Darfur, and so on. And your two questions, I would reply to them by referring to concrete example. When I said that about Obama, the war he does not want to win. The war against Daesh seems to me to be the war, strangely enough, he doesn't want to win. What did I mean? Mm-hmm. I was just coming back from Iraq and Syria a few weeks ago. I'm happening to shoot these days, these weeks, this recent month, a documentary about the 1,000 kilometers of front line mm-hmm. between the Kurds and Daesh. Daesh is beheading James Foley and killing the people who listen music in Bataclan, but they are also fighting on one front line of 1,000 kilometers, the Kurds.
Who are fighting back.
Who are fighting back. And by the way, they are much stronger, and the ISIS is less brave when they face real battlers and soldiers as the Kurds than when they are in front of a man with the hands like this on the knees waiting for the knee.
Who's a journalist, by the way?
Journalist. They are very brave terrorists and they are very coward soldiers. So what struck me when I made, it took me 2 months with my crew, with my camera, these 1,000 kilometers, what struck me is that it was not an unwinnable war at all. Not only it was not unwinnable, but each time I was eyewitness of some clashes between the Kurds and ISIS, I saw and I filmed, and you will see soon, ISIS escaping and the Kurds advancing. So I could not prevent myself from thinking that there is not the real will to defeat ISIS. And to be more precise, there might be the will in the free world in general, but maybe in America more than anywhere else. There might be the idea that at the end of the day, a reserve of jihadists, a bin, une poubelle at jihadists, enclosed in their border might not be such a bad thing. There might be this calculation that it would be better to contain but not destroy this reserve of. That's what I meant when I said the war we don't really want to win.
Because it's winnable.
It's more than winnable. Again, if we give to the Kurds the proper weapons, the proper instructions, the strategical command, because they belong to a coalition, it will be done easily. You can compare ISIS to Nazism for the ideology, but certainly not for the strength. Nothing comparable between the Wehrmacht, which was a huge power, and the ISIS, who are, again, bad soldiers and coward. I filmed the Battle of Sinjar a few weeks ago. There was no battle, nearly no battle, because the ISIS ran away without battling. That is about Obama. Now, left, not left. For me, the most important, the core of the ideal of the left of my youth, which is still today, is internationalism. Mm-hmm. Internationalism means what? It means unity of mankind, brotherhood of all victims, that there is not good and bad victims. And so internationalism, what I kept from that, from the time when I was a Marxist-Leninist, is that there is no difference between victims if you are white or black, your skin, if you are Jew or Muslim, if you are from Europe or from Pakistan. And what strikes me, what despairs me, what puts me in anger is when I see some of the leftists of today who choose their victims. And who choose them in function of what? In function of a so-called supposed geopolitics. The same who go in the streets to scream their indignation, which I can understand, when there is 1,800 people of Gaza killed. I can understand that they mourn that. Myself, each child, Palestinian child, dead by collateral attack is a disaster. They never go in the street to protest against not the 1,800, but the 260,000 deaths of Syria. They never go in the street to protest against the million. I never saw them. When I was in the street of Paris to protest against the 1 million deaths of Rwanda, no one of them was there.
6 million Congolese.
When the Darfur, 400,000 deaths, no one was there. This for me is a real scandal. This double standard, this idea of good and bad victims, this is a scandal of our time. I remember a few years ago, 10 years ago, there is a great journal in France, you all know it, which is Le Monde. And Le Monde was directed at this time by two great guys, Jean-Marie Colombani and Edoui Plenel. And they asked me to make some stories, some reportage. I said yes, on one condition, which both of them accepted immediately. Let's go. I will go to report on the wars of today, of which the public opinion, in particular the left, never speaks. Because these wars don't match with the big narrative according to which you have on one side the empire, which is America, on the other side the former colonies. And there was 6 wars, which was Angola, Burundi, which was threatened to become another Rwanda, Sri Lanka, Darfur, Nuba Mountains. Nobody spoke about Nuba Mountains. A slow extermination, but nobody cared because the Jews were not implied. Israel could not be they could seek as much as they could not criminalize Israel. And America was on the good side. Colin Powell at this time made a little express trip in Sudan to say this is not good. So he was on the side of the victims. Victims endorsed by Colin Powell are not victims for a lot of people in the world. Victims who could be endorsed by Israel or who could be friends with Israel are bad victims, false victims, criminal victims, suspect victims. And this makes me crazy. And I oppose to that, that's true, the real values of the internationalism to which I have been faithful all my life. I tell you another story. You remember Durban, which was a conference in South Africa,
the anti-racism.
It was an anti-racist conference with a lot of NGOs gathering to protest against racism, slavery, and discrimination. And the meeting ended with a crowd of leftist NGOs shouting against Israel with this famous motto, "One Jew, one bullet, one Jew, one bullet." This is what the end of Durban.
This is an anti-racism conference.
Anti-racism conference. The end of that was that Israel was guilty of all the disorder of the world, that Israel was the most criminal state in the world, and that every Jew deserved one bullet. The conference ended with that. For me, it raised 2 problems. Number one, it was the act of baptism, the climax, I would say, of the new anti-Semitism, which is based on the hatred of Israel. Only for that, it was a scandal, and there was a shame on all the participants of this conference. But there was another shame for me, and I wrote that immediately at this time, 10 years ago. I remember all the representatives of these poor people of Burundi, of Rwanda, of the untouchable in India, the last caste, of tribes, forgotten tribes of Mexico or of Nicaragua who wanted their rights to be recognized. They came, all these people, they came to Durban with such a hope, with the idea that for the first time, thanks to the United Nations, they will have a stage to express their demands and their rights, and they were not given the parole. They were not given the possibility to express themselves because they could not prove, they could not take their passport showing that their enemy was Israel and the US. So they were out of frame, they were out of debate, and they were out of parole, and they went away from Durban with a big sorrow in the heart and with tears in their eyes. And for me, this was the second scandal of Durban.